I think we all, the citizens of this world, in fact, are very, very concerned regarding sustainability and that. And each one of us has a responsibility as well to make a contribution to it. So PIARC makes a contribution as far as transport is concerned in a number of specific ways that I can mention. I'll mention a couple of them for you. For instance, the work that we do in terms of the research work but more importantly, the practical experiences that PIARC brings to the party, to the table of the member countries over there as far as doing it. But we talk about recycling materials and this is one of the things that people tend to forget. We believe sincerely that the road industry has been far more proactively promoting sustainability by recycling the use of materials, etc., rather than bringing in new materials and creating new quarries, etc., and so forth, right? By recycling that. And the research which has gone into it to say that how can we use the recycled material better than what its original purpose was and original performance was, yeah? That's what we tend to do. Of course, the emphasis that we put on good management of the road network, and that's where the emphasis comes in on asset management. The advances that we've made, not only in terms of the materials, by using waste materials as well, been able to use most, I just gave you an example of that, but also the advances that we've made in terms of how do we manage the labor around asset management? What is the plant that we use around measure? How do we reduce the carbon footprint, not only in the manufacturing of the materials in that, but also on the plant, etc., that is being used for asset management? You know as well as I do that if we don't maintain our assets, whether it's our individual homes or whether it's this massive network of our countries, which happens to be the most distinct valuable asset, whether it's the road network or the rail network, you know, it's the most valuable asset of a country, that if we don't look after it, you know, the cost of that, you know, there's this formula that we as engineers tend to use, what we call the 1-6-18 formula. But if you don't spend your 1 unit of currency now, and if you delay the work of your maintenance by 3 years or so, it's going to cost you 6 times more, and if you delay it any further, it's going to cost you anything between 14 and 18 times more. And that's where the role of PIARC comes in bringing these experiences, sharing the knowledge that we have in terms of how best to do that, and hopefully, you know, various member countries do adapt that for their use. The challenges facing the network is starting to become new, in my opinion. Climate is starting to play a major role in terms of playing the challenges. In the past, you know, the mantra used to be funding, funding, funding. That hasn't gone away anywhere. In fact, it has increased because we have to now make sure that any infrastructure that we're maintaining and improving has to be resilient to move these to face the challenges imposed upon us by nature. If you look at around the world, the floods which are coming in more often than in the past. You know, so that means it's not a question of just building bigger and fatter. We got to make sure that the money that we spend on this is spent wisely. It is spent in a manner that can be sustainable as far as the infrastructure is concerned, and that the lifespan of that infrastructure is increased. Because we won't be able to keep on building new infrastructure after a particular a natural disaster. Those, to my mind, are new challenges coming, making sure that our infrastructure is resilient, and any greenfield infrastructure that we build, transport infrastructure like roads and bridges, tunnels, etc., resiliency is taken into account at the design stage. You know, it shouldn't be as sort of an afterthought. So those I believe in. Funding still remains, of course, in the thing. You see, the challenges that we face is that when you have funding requirements in that, right, with due respect to our political leadership in our respective countries, when you're maintaining something, it's not an opportunity to cut a ribbon. When you build something new, it's an opportunity to cut a ribbon. You understand that, Rikazar? Yeah? Look, there's a lot of lessons that we've learned, first of all, from the pandemic. Not only in the road industry, but in our personal lives as well. Let me also make use of this opportunity, with your permission, firstly, to say that I believe this pandemic is going to stay with us. Not to the same degree and severity, We thank God for that it's not going to be like that. But that also puts us on a responsibility to take the necessary precautions. Let's not think the same. I personally believe, and I've got no experience or expertise whatsoever as far as medical issues are concerned, this may hopefully will just end up like an annual flu thing or something that we've got. So please let us still practice the safe protocols that we require. It's not so much, I believe, in my opinion, humble opinion, is that how it has affected the roads itself, but the operational parts of it. For instance, when we're moving across borders, whether it is within our countries as well, within your regions, within the countries, or within the provinces or cities, because this pandemic hasn't necessarily been to say treated all of us equally. It hasn't. Some parts of our respective countries was much severe than the other parts of our countries, and of course some countries were much more severe, especially at the beginning when the pandemic first year hit us around the world. It didn't choose to say I'm going to leave one out and just attack the other one. It came across to all of us. So that movement of people, the restriction that came into it, was the biggest challenge for us, because people lost jobs, people lost their employment, their income, and that because of the lockdowns that we had to face, etc. And how did we operate? But having said that, I believe that roads played a very, very major role in terms of making sure that people still stayed connected remotely with each other, where the delivery still took place. Our food moved, from A to B where we needed to go. Or the food was delivered to us from a restaurant if you weren't managing, or at least from your supermarket to your home to be able to cook that food. So roads still played a very, very vital role in keeping us linked and connected to each other. And that's, I think, one of the bigger lessons that we've learned coming out. Of course, there are other lessons as well, especially in terms of behavior and so forth. ITF is a very important event that takes place. It has a very positive impact on the industry. It brings a whole lot of people from around the world together. And this, being able to now, after 2 years, to meet in person itself, even if we are not talking about the technologies and the innovations, etc., that we've been busy with and sharing with everybody else, just to be able to see an old friend again and shake hands, that itself has been a great, great benefit. So thank you, ITF, and to the organizer of ITF, to bring us together after such a time.
How important then is it for you to be here, and what have you been able to do during these past few days?